yeah, I'm happy to take questions, and I will sign any books that anybody puts in front of me. Yes?
Sorry, I came in late. You might have already said this, but who are your favorite writers or your favorite novels?
I read everything, and I grew up reading everything. So, and also, I forgot most of what I read. But my favorite book of all time is Sea of Glass by Barry Longyear. It's just like a goofy old science fiction novel. My favorite thing reading growing up were just science fiction short stories. I really admired how they set up kind of a mousetrap, and then you reach the end and it's like that Twilight Zone twist, and you just go, you get like a little burst of pleasure out of that. So I used to just read those one after another as fast as I could. And now I've actually had the opportunity to, so once you write a science fiction novel, you have like a magic card. You can go talk to other science fiction authors and say like, I'm part of the club, guys. Like, hey, talk to me. And so, as part of that, I was super excited. I joined the Science Fiction Writers Association, everything. And I've managed to co-edit an anthology of science fiction stories. And so now I've kind of come full circle from my love of all those stories. And now I'm soliciting those stories from the authors I love and then editing them and putting them into a book. So it's kind of really, really fun to be able to do that at this point and come all the way back around. Yes.
Is it pronounced Arcos or Archos?
Arcos. Yes. A friend of mine just sent me a link today, and so when I named him Arcos, I like the etymology of all these words. It's fun, right? You look up where all the words came from, and you pick one that you think is cool. I had fun naming like all of the freeborn like arbiters and optios and hoplites, and kind of getting into like Roman infantry and looking at stuff. It's fun. Arcos, unfortunately, is a company, and they make like laptops or whatever, but at the time I didn't figure they were a big enough company for me to worry about. Well, now they've started making like home automation equipment, and it's like getting too similar, and I'm like, oh no, you guys, back off. So yeah, it's Arcos R14, and the R14 designation, revision 14, becomes important. Yes, sir.
You talked about balancing 10 years worth of study of robotics and 10 years worth of experience now writing. Can you talk about how the study of robotics informs your writing and kind of generalizing out to why students should be studying a topic and then be able to write about it later? It's not just all 100% we're making things up.
Sure.
It should be informed by something.
Well, yeah, so, okay, I mean, the obvious thing is I learned a lot about real robots, and so not only do I know a lot about robots, but I know a lot of people that know a lot about robots. So whenever I write stuff, I give it to them, and they nitpick it like crazy until it satisfies them, But I feel like that's kind of obvious, right? If you know a lot about something, it's going to go into what you write. I mean, I write about robots because I learned about robots for 10 years. I write about Oklahoma and Native Americans and stuff because I spent 21 years living there, and that was my life. So I write about Indians and robots, and that's my thing because that's my background. The less obvious aspect of having a PhD in particular is that people respect the hell out of that. Even if you've forgotten everything that you've learned, I mean, you really get to carry that with you forever. And whenever you try to sell something, right? Because I'm writing books for fun, but also because I get paid and I can support my family. And so at some point you have to sell this, okay? It's not just a purely artistic endeavor. And the first story that you have to tell when you're trying to sell a book for real is why are you the right person to write this book? What's special about you? When we try to get NPR to put you on Science Friday, what are we going to tell Ira, right? Like, oh, you love robots? You better have a PhD. You better have like, it doesn't have to be something that you learned either. It can also be like, as I said, we write about things we've learned and experiences we've had. So if you don't have a convincing story about, why you're the perfect person for this, then you better be just like the best writer ever. And you're still probably not going to sell it, because ultimately that's a huge part of what you're doing. The other thing that grad school really helped me out with was, and science and everything, is just forcing yourself to do stuff, right? And everybody figures out different ways to force themselves to do things that they need to do, that they don't necessarily want to be doing at that moment. I don't really go so much for the guilt. A lot of people get eventually to a point where they feel super guilty if they're not in the lab till 8 p.m. or whatever. I'm more ambitious. I feel competitive, you know. I want to be up to with the Joneses, and my colleagues at Carnegie Mellon are driving the Curiosity rover. One of them invented CAPTCHA. So I've got to write a lot of good books in order to keep up with these people. So, you know, you form a work ethic because eventually if you're in grad school long enough, you're doing research where no one is really making you do anything. You become the world's expert on whatever it is that you're studying, and there's nobody that can tell you anything. And so once you get out there ahead of the pack and you're just running and everybody else is behind you, then you really have to start motivating yourself. And that's what grad school does. I mean, if you make it through, then you have certainly learned how to motivate yourself. And that's the kind of thing you need when you wake up every day and it's a sick day and all your friends are at work. And you could very well, I tell myself every day, I'm going to finish Mass Effect 3 today. Get in there. I could probably level up. I don't know. Do I have enough experience? I'm going to pick some stuff. I'm going to get out the skill progression charts and map it out. I never do it. I never ever do it. Mass Effect 3 came out like 5 years ago. I don't know, like Paragon? I don't know. But like, so anyway, you know, you find these ways to motivate yourself. And science and engineering, I mean, sure, you have the basic actual knowledge that you get, but there's so much that just comes from just being in that situation or around those types of people for long enough. Yes?
So, you mentioned that you're part of the Science Fiction Association. What's it like being around a bunch of science fiction writers? So I imagine that's probably very interesting and probably a tale or two to tell.
It's intense, right? Because it depends. If you're around somebody that you idolize, right, then it's scary, you know, because you don't want to say stupid things, you know. So like when I met Neil Stephenson, his head is shaved and he has like a big billy goat beard and he's very intense, and I was just like really scared and didn't talk to him very much. He's told me get a treadmill, you know, and he explained like the intricacies of like blood sugar while you write and stuff, and I was just like, it's a nomicon. But then often you're around other people, you know, that are at the same level as you or are coming up still, and so you end up everybody. You know, it's kind of like herding cats, right? I don't think writers just naturally all tend to hang out together, but it is very useful to have like a writers group or get around other people, you know, once a week. And you know, with my writers group in Portland has tons of science fiction writers for some reason. I don't know what the deal is. And the Pacific Northwest in general. But in my writers group, I had people who are writing plays and musicals and novels, people who do TV movies of the week, like people who write television shows. And it's really useful, I think, to branch out and have all different types, because it does get, and I don't do the writing seminars and stuff like that, because again, I think I'm too competitive or whatever, you know, like when I get too close to somebody else's stuff, I get worried that I'm going to copy it or something. So, you know, that's just my personal thing, but it is very useful to seek out other people that are doing similar things, or at least people who are telling stories, you know, and then combine forces with them. Yes?
Who is your favorite character or your favorite character to write Robopocalypse?
That's tough, you know. It was certainly either Matilda or Takeo. I really like Takeo, you know. So he's the elderly Japanese man, and he's got this sort of android that he lives with, but it's not a sexual thing, right? Like, I just liked sort of the inherent kind of sadness that was in there, and the idea that he lives with this simulacrum of a dead wife. I mean, that's kind of the implication, is that he's lost maybe a wife that he had for like 40 plus years. And in order to sort of go on living, he's got this machine that kind of looks like her and just is around the house. And there's just something so gentle and sad about that. And yet, you know, he truly loves the machine. in a way that's sure it's creepy, but it's, again, not sexual. And so it really turns him into a hero, right? Because he's one of the characters that can serve the theme of the book, which is we need technology even if we're fighting technology. And then that's his great strength, right? It's Takeo is able to employ technology to protect himself. And in fact, the machines that are around him feel very protective of him because he is so defenseless and sort of elderly and just sweet, you know. So he's definitely my favorite character. You know, he shows up in the next novel as well, and Mikiko as well. But, you know, it was really fun actually to pick up these characters and continue their arcs because, you know, for Takeo, one thing I wondered all throughout Robopocalypse is, you know, after Mikiko becomes freeborn, right, and she wakes up, she's not this shadow of a dead person anymore. She is her own thing. And so the question is whether it's fair for him to force her to keep performing, you know, and serving in that role, which helps him feel better, or whether he should sort of set her free. And it's like kind of a, I don't know, it's kind of a tough decision that he has to make, and I was happy to be able to explore that in the next novel. Who was your favorite character? What was your favorite part? No, sorry, I'm not allowed to ask that question. Yes.
How do you justify conflict between human and AI when actually the only time you really get conflict between species is when they're after the same resources?
Right.
Certainly you would not have the same conflict with resources that you would have between humans and AI.
Well, they're both moral agents, that's how. So human beings will kill each other. Well, human beings are capable of murder, right? There's no other animal that's really capable of that. Other animals are amoral. They're acting according to whatever their sort of behavioral, you know, specifications are. So human beings are able to just do evil stuff that has no reason. And AIs, through their level of intelligence, I think would share that. That's not to say that's how I set that up in the book. You know, I don't think that Arcos is evil. Arcos is simply operating according to a plan that we're not smart enough to understand. So he's kind of godlike in that way. He works in mysterious ways. You know, a lot of it actually gets explained in the sequel, a lot of Arcos' motivations. What I found that was interesting, and by the way, Arcos does see human beings as a resource that can be used. And he doesn't do anything for no reason. And I didn't mean to imply that, although he would be capable of that, I think, because he's intelligent enough. But yeah, so what I found is that there's such momentum in pop culture for killer robots that want to kill every single person, right? Like Skynet wants to murder everybody. RUR, where the term robot was coined, the play in 1921, the robots kill every single human being. And I think that's actually really boring, and it's disrespectful to the intelligence of the machine. You know, why would it be so obsessed with human beings? I don't think there's a reason. And so that's not what's happening in any of the work that I do. And ultimately, I actually have Arcos say the words, "I am saving your species. Everything I am doing is to help you." And he says, if I wanted to kill all humans, I would have detonated nukes. I would have rendered the environment a place where you couldn't survive, and I could. And he says, I didn't do that. And yet, nobody gets that. Everybody comes away from, they go into Robopocalypse and they come away from it thinking, oh, the evil AI wanted to kill all humans. And I really attribute that to 100 years of pop culture sort of telling us this is what robots do. So even when you read the book and the robot says, this is not what I'm doing, that's not enough, you know. And so actually I think it takes a sequel, damn it. So, to get that across, you know. I respect robots too much to have them obsessed with killing every human. That's such a simplistic goal.
Well, a better environment would be outer space where you don't have corrosive atmosphere.
Well, yeah, and actually that was one of
easy energy and easy access to materials like the asteroid belt.
And who's to say that they're not? You know? Yeah. So anyway, one thing I loved about this was thinking about that, right? And so one of my favorite things with Robopocalypse, well, I'm very impressed with myself. was the lair where Arcos buries himself. You know, so my father-in-law is a geologist, and that was inspired by a real nuclear program called Swords to Plowshares, where people thought, well, hey, nukes are great. What if they're fairly new? I think it was like in the 60s or something, and they said, what if we drill a hole into where a lot of natural gas is at, and then we put a nuke down there, and of course we'll plug up that chimney, and then we'll detonate the nuke, and then we'll suck out all the natural gas because the rock will have been fragmented. We do this now, it's called fracking, they found a better way. So they did this. The first thing that happened was it created a spherical cavity of vaporized rock. All that vapor shot directly out of the chimney and spewed all of that stuff. And then a lot of irradiated natural gas shot out. It was totally unusable. But it left behind this really neat environment, because it was a spherical cave where the walls have been melted in glass. And it's radioactive. Human beings do not want to be going down into this place. And it's buried under the ground, and it's safe, and it's just like, I thought, that's the coolest place ever to stick in AI, right? I mean, that's where they go, to a human lethal environment in a very remote place. And so that was kind of the inspiration behind that. But it's really fun to think about the world from outside the human mind and from the perspective of an AI. Okay, is that enough? All right, guys. Oh, sorry.
Have you mastered the dance known as
No, not really. I played Turn Down for What, though, for my 4-year-old, and she did kind of a Matrix thing. But that's about the most complicated that we get. My kind of dance that I do is I just kind of walk around like this. It's kind of like the robot. Oh, okay. Well,
One more. I'm curious of all of the different robots, systems that you worked on, like through graduate school, whatever. Have any of those things, it's another 10 years, come to market in some form?
yeah, no, of course. They have, like, what's really funny is that I've had quite a few friends take their basic research in mobility and apply them to toys. So there's I can't remember what it's called, but it's this little penguin, and it's a biped, and it kind of walks around with these little. And I remember when that was the RHEX, like a DARPA-funded little tree climbing surveillance robot, and now it's like a little cute penguin. And then there's Keep On. That was a robot designed to interact with autistic children for like long periods of time to teach them eye contact and stuff. And Keep On is like now a toy. So you know, of course, all of the self-driving car stuff. There was the DARPA Grand Challenge and another one. And then all of those guys that, including the people that got me into Carnegie Mellon, they all went to Stanford, that team of researchers, and then Google bought them all. And so now my friends like Sebastian Throne and Chris Urmson, they all build Google cars, and those things are like, those are real, you know, that's going to be out soon. You know, one thing that I'm kind of sad about is all of my research was in intelligent environments, and so I was building things kind of like what Nest was building, and they just got acquired for like $1 billion. So I kind of wonder what would have happened if I had stayed in the industry and kept building little devices that that monitor what's going on in the home. But all of that kind of stuff is definitely coming to market right now. Basically, there's this whole baby boomers are retiring thing, and we need to make the environment safer so people can live independently for as long as possible, and that was my exact thesis work. It's going to be a huge industry, and it already is growing. All right, guys. Thank you.